Two, one, and we're live. Welcome everyone to our live stream of Friday. Every Friday, we're trying to do these live streams either with Patrick Findaro or with Joaquin Rosales, who's an immigration attorney who acts as legal counsel here at Visa Franchise. Joaquin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alaattin, how you doing? Happy Friday.
Thank you so much. I'm doing amazing.
That's great.
Cool. So this live stream comes in a very timely. We want to talk about today about the recent things that are happening in our economy, in our immigration industry, in the media. Certainly, the administration here changed new rules and regulations and policies are in session, and they are having a disrupting effect on certain industries, such as immigration, such as trade. Um, Talking about tariffs, we'll be talking about its implication on immigrations. Immigration is we'll be talking about the immigration policies of the Trump administration, and we'll try to tie that into our clients' situation and what they should be aware of, what they should look out for, and what the reality of the situation is. Because most often than not, when you see stuff in media, and I mean, I come from media. As a journalist in the newsrooms, when you have a headline, right, you got to make sure that you have a big headline so that your story is being read. When people spend 5 6 minutes reading your story, they may not realize, oh, okay, well, I understand. It's consistent with the headline, but headline is like 70% of the whole story. It's big, bulky. U.S.
Breaking
citizens
news.
are being
Everything is
deported.
breaking news.
Yeah, U.S. citizens are being deported. Green cards are being taken away. Anti-immigration. Oh, this story, that story. All of a sudden, everyone like, hold on a minute. What is happening again? When did we become an anti-immigrant country all of a sudden? So we want to talk about the reality of all that to sort of like clear the air a little bit. But before we go there, Joaquin Rosales Arambury, you're a citizen. You've been living
Yep.
in this country. Donald Trump is your president, and he's bringing in these policies, and you're in this economy as an American citizen and as a professional. What do you make of the tariff situation that we're going through?
It's the big talk of town for the past, month and a half, I guess. Obviously, we've had 3 months of this new administration, but his rhetoric in the campaign trail is matching what he's at least talking about now as a president. Um, I think that there's a lot of hyperbole to it. I think that it's sort of positioning more than anything. Um, and I think it's going to be tempered. You already see sort of his positioning a little bit more tamed. First, it was 140% on everything and everybody. Even the champagne was going to get tariffs. I mean, everybody tariffs for you, tariffs for you. Everybody's getting tariffs, and then little by little, you start realizing that's probably not a great idea in the long term. And you tone down the rhetoric. And I think that at least it's people around him um, are telling him, look, you boast whatever you want to boast, but then in the end, we got to get to the table. We got to have this conversation. So you got to
Mhm.
tone it down a little bit. So I think it's more of a positioning thing, and I think, like I said, it's going to be a temporary thing, and you are seeing the effects of the rhetoric in the market and obviously across the world. You know, Countries are forging different alliances that it's not beneficial to you to the United States. So that's why I see now, and I think that it's logical that the administration is slowing down their pace when it
Mhm.
comes to their big talk on tariffs and this defensive posture, right, or offensive posture, I guess, towards the other big dogs like China, etc.
Mhm.
So yes, I think it's an important issue, but I think it's more of a temporary issue, to be honest.
I think it did the effect that people thought that it would. I mean, it was. I don't know how realistic this is going to be by tariffing the rest of the world, and urging people or pushing people to bring the production of manufacturing here to the U.S. I mean, if it was beneficial and if it made sense, it would have been done already. The whole reason why it's not there, that's because it doesn't make sense within the given situation that the world is going through. Plus, protectionism is never good for any economy, and markets did price it when the first tariffs were announced. Markets did price it, and the stock market dipped about what 10%, 12% in a matter of a day or two. So that was a clear reaction. Everyone said, "Oh, hold on a minute. We are not sure about this, and we don't think that this is a good thing." And as long as the announcement came to delay the tariffs for 90 days, stock market, markets picked back up again, and they said, "Oh, okay, all right, this is about the right thing to do." And then came the exceptions. Oh, iPhones are exempt, phones and smartphones and tablets and this technology and that technology. Um, all of a sudden, you see a much softer approach towards tariffs. Now, let's not be mistaken that you know Trump's America first. That's basically the policy that's been the winning recipe for Trump and his entourage. And he wants to bring jobs here, right? How does he want to do it? He has some ideas. He's trying those, and he's getting a response. Um, is he going to go all out and risk his popularity and risk everything? You know the political system here better than I do, Joaquin. You got the midterms. Now, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we yeah, the administration is very recent, but every politician and every administration is always focused on the next election. And you're right, it's never too early to begin posturing yourself um, in a manner that's going to be well received by the voters, right? Especially when you have already Congress on your side in terms of your political alignment, whichever party is in control, you got to defend basically what you have, right? So you minimize the losses because historically, whatever president, whatever party has the presidency and won the presidency on the midterms, historically, the other party comes in and takes away a bunch of seats in the House of Representatives. So I think you're absolutely right. I think there's just a lot of hyperbole, a lot of tough talk right now, and sort of implementing a little bit of what was said in the campaign trail, but more of in a vocal manner, right? Just to then later on say, look, we're going to soften our position internally. That would say that, and I don't think he's the type of person that he would ever say that. Oh, I'm backing down. It's an ego thing, but that's besides the point. But in the end, I think that it's going to come down to, hey, look, it was bad at the beginning. Now we're a year into or a year and a half into what I started, and now yes, we began talking about 140% tariffs for everybody, and now we're just talking about maybe 10%. But look, we got all these other big boys on the table, and they're playing ball with us, and now we're finally being treated fairly. So it's going to be spent like every politician spends their rhetoric to make them seem like they're doing a good job. So, look, in the end, I think that you're absolutely right. I think that the elections really do matter, and administrations position themselves uh, the closer you get to those elections in a way that they can just say, "Hey, look what we've done. Look at the progress we've accomplished. And I think that's going to be the strategy eventually, to gradually soften the tone on tariffs, and yet say, look, I did what I promised that I was going to do. I was going to be tough with this whole tariff stance, and then now look at me. I'm bringing people to the table, and we're having a chat. We're having a discussion, and then we're not going to be stiffed, right? America's not going to be stiffed, and I think that's essentially what's going to be the argument ultimately. And then it's going to be essentially what it was before. I don't think there's going to be much of a change in terms of tariffs and all that. But I think in the mind, in the psyche of a lot of people, who support him, they're going to say, look, he did what he said he was going to do in the campaign trail, right? And now he's just being a businessman, and he's essentially getting things done. So that's my sort of take from
Yeah.
sort of a citizen perspective, right? From an
Yeah.
immigration attorney perspective, I have a different take on this whole situation, right? So I
Yeah,
guess on that.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that
Yeah.
because immigration landscape, let's say, here in the U.S. seems to be a little bit polarized. I mean, on one side you have the media, talking about some big stories about immigration, and almost to an extent that taking things out of its context to achieve something else, right? Immigration or certain deportation cases or certain rules and regulations could be a tool for the media to get to where they want to get to, but is it accurately reflecting the truth on the ground? That's one needs to look at, right? So from and we got questions coming in here as well. And guys, please keep on sending your questions. We're going to try to answer those. From a perspective of somebody who's thinking about coming here to the U.S., bringing their money, blood, sweat, and tears, and hard work, and time, and skills, and talent, is this not a good time for them to do so?
No, I agree with you. Like you said, you come from media. You always want to get this sort of breaking news, attention grabbing, um, sort of headlines. And look, we've had this discussion before. I mean, he's certainly going after uh, a segment of immigration, right? And he's being very tough on that segment of immigration, and it deals with um, sort of undocumented immigrants, or immigrants that have come through sort of an executive paths done by the previous administration. He's getting challenged by the courts on it. But when it comes to the sort of investment visas, talent-based visas, um, we haven't seen any real pushback, to be quite honest. Now, in terms of like sort of security and all that, like you may say that people are being scrutinized a little bit more, but in the end, on the visa and the merits of the visas, or whether or not they're clamping down on visas like the E2 entrepreneur visas, investment visas, or talent-based visas like the O1 or EB1 or EB2, that's not a reality that we've seen. And like the last time that we had this conversation, it wasn't implemented in the first administration. I don't think it's going to be implemented on the second administration. We haven't even seen the so-called travel ban yet.
Yeah,
That was supposed to come
that was
really
supposed to come in
fast.
60 days, and there were
Yeah.
too many countries that were going to get banned or
So,
implications.
and then look, in the end, when it comes to this type of visas, it's not smart. He wants money to be poured into the United States. He's said it a bunch of times. So for the people who want to be investors, also specifically for the E2, if you think about it, I mean, the whole point of the E2 visa is not for you to be investing in other countries, right? It's for you to be investing in the United States. So the whole idea that this somehow, some way, this tariff sort of rhetoric that we're hearing can be sort of detrimental to a pathway for an entrepreneur that wants to come over here, whether it be through an investment or through their talents. I don't think it's very logical. I mean, it's specifically for the investment side of it. They want you to come in here and they want you to spend your money on American things, on American goods, employ Americans. So it goes. It's illogical to think that they would want to take away basically what you're trying to um, s- speak about in your rhetoric in terms of bringing in money and bringing in jobs to the United States, right? So you can't say that you want to do that on one side and the other, and on the other side, just shut the door to all these people who want to come in here and they want to invest in the United States and they want to bring in their talents to the United States in order to make it a better country, right? So I think that the proof is in the pudding. We
Yeah.
haven't really seen it, and I don't think we're going to see it, at least in that segment of immigration, right? Entrepreneurship, talent-based immigration. On the other segment of immigration, for sure, uh,
Yeah.
there's been a tough stance, and I don't think it's going to get better. But at least for entrepreneurs, investors, people with talents, and great professions, um, I think that you're in a safe spot.
Cool. This is quite interesting, and this is quite um, related to what our audience is, trying to see and understand. They're like, hold on a minute. I thought this guy was pro business. I'm bringing in money. I'm going to set up business and I'm going to provide employment to Americans and pay taxes. Why should it be against me? Well,
Right.
he's not against you. That's the thing. He's not against you. But is he against to those who came to this country illegally? Yes, he is. Is he going to deport those? Well, you better bet he will. He will deport those. Is he going to put in, much harsher sort of like policies in place towards border security? Yes, he will. It would be absurd if he would not. I mean, that's what the guy said. That's what people voted for. Um, People wanted a stronger border. People didn't want illegal immigrants running around undocumented. Everybody's immigration friendly in America, but people want this to be done in a legal way, in the best way possible. Now, is there an anti-immigrant sentiment towards certain categories of immigrants and towards certain nationalities, certain visa categories? Probably, potentially. Will that affect the people who are bringing in their talents here? I don't think so. Investors? Absolutely not. Trump is now introducing this thing called the Trump Gold Card. What does that mean? And even in his speech, he said something like, "Oh, we want to attract the best global citizens to come and have a green card in the U.S. and it's going to be $5 million," which he ridiculously overpriced, in my opinion. Nobody's going to pay $5 million to a green card, and the calculations were off big time. So yes, I do understand why people are like, "Oh, okay, it's about I think we need to wait a little bit." Well, I understand that, but is there really, really something to be worried about? I mean, as Joaquin said it, I really don't think so.
For the categories of visas that we talked about, yeah, 100% I agree with you. And at the same time, I think that immigration, it was the number one subject on the campaign trail. By far, it was even better. It was number one, and then it was the economy. Essentially, that's
Yeah,
not historically something that you see on the campaign trail, right? As a sort of well, what are the main topics that people are concerned of? But it was in this past election. So I think it was only logical that he would come in swinging when it comes to immigration right off the bat, right from the beginning. But he tends to have a very sort of attention span, just like a
He's a
lot of people in
showman,
this
and he
country,
wants to
right?
make
Where
sure
like
that,
he's
you
gonna
know,
move to something else, and I think that we're seeing this whole immigration issues right now. Um, you know, but I think that the topic is going to change in the next couple of months, and he's going to move on to other things, right?
cool.
And we're already seeing it, right? We're seeing it with the whole tariff thing. So it was really immigration, immigration, immigration in the first 2 months, right? And it still is immigration, but now we're pivoting a little bit more. Now we're talking about tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. It's going to be more about economy, also, changes internally to what he believes should be done in terms of school systems and all that. More of
Yeah.
like a cultural war issues, and then I think the immigration issue is going to take a back seat. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. We got a few questions, Joaquin. Let's answer these questions and then let's get going. I know you want to come to the beach side, and we got a lunch together. So let's do our best to provide as much information as possible. One question from David: Can E2 visa holders qualify for any kind of business support or protection in the U.S.? David, I'm not really sure if I'm understanding the question correctly. But are you talking about some business grants, maybe some local associations? If I'm understanding this correctly, as an E2 visa holder, you pretty much have a very, very similar rights to an American business owner. Um, what's your
Yeah,
take on it?
you do, but in order to qualify for the E2 visa, you can. You're not going to come in, and it's not going to look good to say that I'm coming in here and trying to get loans, right? Even though you can get loans, but they have to be backed up by your own assets, your personal assets. So regulations say, you can have loans, but if you're putting up your house back in your country and you have a bank in your country lending you the money, right? In order to invest in a business here in the United States, then that's fine. Um, but I think that's a question. Once you get over here and down here, and once you've already invested your own money, right? Because I mean, if it's backed up by your own assets, um, then after that, you can find ways to sort of expand that sort of cash pool in order to expand the business. And then if you're creating jobs, right, and you're making more money, which means more money for the government's pocket in terms of taxes, then yeah, sure. But initially, when you're trying to apply, that's not a good strategy to say, hey, I want to come in here and I want to start, getting loans from American banks in order to do my business. They want to see money from outside of the United States come in,
Come
right?
in, yeah.
Come in. That's what they want.
Cool. Another question here: Do visa policies impact Canadian or Latin American entrepreneurs differently? Again,
You're not
very,
wrong. So first of all, we can't. The,
very
you can't
specific
discriminate.
question.
Yeah, very specific. You can't discriminate. That's the letter of the law, right? You can't discriminate whether you're from Canada, Latin America, the Middle East, whatever it may be. Okay, you cannot discriminate. That's just simply what the letter of the law is. Um, how we seen any differences? To be quite honest, it's not more of like, oh, you're from here, you're from there. It's just from essentially, and whether or not it has really not much to do with the investment or the type of visa that you're applying. What you see and what we're seeing as immigration attorneys is that some of the pushback comes from countries that have already had a pushback, but it's more focused on, do we think that you're just going to stay here in the United States? You know what I mean? And you're not going to just go back as you're supposed to, or at least seek a different pathway in order to become a resident here in the United States, right? Just simply come in through one of these non-immigrant visas. As we explained, the non-immigrant is it's a visa that doesn't give you a residency, but it gives you the ability to come here and work, bring your family, etc. So it's whether or not you utilize that type of visa, and it's a risk for them in the eyes of the adjudicators, of the agents, right? Consular officers, that you're probably just going to simply stay. You're not going to try to either pursue a different avenue to get a residency, right? And you're just simply going to stay after your visa is expired. You're not going to try to renew it. So I don't think that's really something that it's occurring where they say, oh, we're going to not let in entrepreneurs from Latin America, but we're going to let in entrepreneurs from Canada. I mean, money is money in the end. If you have a really good business plan, if you have the support and the team behind you that know what they're doing in order to propose and have a very, convincing argument to the officers about your investment and the people that you're going to employ, right? And the business that you're going to bring in, then that's what matters in the end.
Cool. All right. We got another. Has any E2 visa applicant been denied?
Well,
I don't know what kind of like
all visas get denied. I mean,
all
not
visas get
what
denied
percentage?
for sure.
What percentage?
Uh,
No, I guess if the question is, if I'm going to rephrase um, this person's question, is there been sort of like an increase in E2 visa denials, percentage wise? We haven't really seen that. It's been 3 months. We have not really seen that. And I'm talking about, not only, through our clients, but colleagues, clients, um,
mm,
big firms, small firms. You know, we're a pretty tight community in the immigration attorney community, right? So we keep we talk a lot about it. So we have not seen, at least in my experience or in my colleagues' experiences, any sort of rise in the percentage of denials since the new administration. We go back to what we said originally, right? The focus is on a different type of immigration, where they're certainly going after that, but not on these type of visas that we're talking about today.
yeah. So another question we got here from Real Estate Flip Mastery. It was like, I'd like an E2. My situation is a little different. Just starting my LLC, EIN, and bank account. I am flipping houses in Texas. All working for me are contractors, not employees. Monthly income going into the bank account is approximately $150,000. So it seems like this gentleman here has an organization, an operation at the side of the range of $150,000 a month. That, I guess, is the volume of the amount of money that's employees are getting paid.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think we touched upon this before in one of our talks. I think so. Real estate, when it comes to flipping, it's a touchy subject. Right? Look, so you can do any sort of business for the E2 visa, and we've seen hundreds, if not thousands, or whatever the number may be, right? Of people being approved for all sorts of businesses. It gets a little touchy when it comes to the whole house flipping model. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but you have to do it in volume, right? Because if not, there's a lot of people that own properties here in Miami and on the beach, whatever it may be, Orlando, Texas, whatever, all across the United States. That doesn't mean that you're investing. That doesn't mean that you have a business, right? So to immigration, unless you have several houses and then you have basically a model in which not only do you own the houses, but the model is you're also investing in renovating these houses, and it's like a continuous cycle of buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling, renovating in volume. Then they look at it as too passive. They look at it as like, what makes you different than just another person who just bought an apartment in Brickell, and they bought it for $500,000 and they just sit on it, and then they wait a year or two and now it's $550,000. So they made 10% on it. You know what I mean? So that's too passive. How is that a business? How is that employing Americans, right? Now, what I always say though, if you look at it from a different perspective, where you say, hey, I'm not really flipping houses. What I'm doing is that I have a business that remodels houses, right, for other people who are selling it. then that's a good way to go about it. Once again, I'm not trying to say to the gentleman that it cannot be done. What I'm saying is that immigration agents, I've had several conversations with a bunch of them that they're retired, some not retired, and they say the same thing. It's like in the end, we want to make sure that you're bringing in business to the United States. You're actually employing people, and it's an actual business, and it's not a passive investment. I mean, the letter of the law of the regulations state that, right? Money at risk, right? So stock market, you can put $1 million, $2 million in the stock market. It's still for them passive. The other aspect of this gentleman's statement that I want to touch on is that you got to be careful as to positioning yourself in a manner where an officer can say, well, it looks to me like you've been doing really well flipping houses from outside of the United States, and you're making 150 grand or whatever it is a month. Why do you need to be here? So the longer you have a business running and you're not here in the States and you're outside of the States and you're operating that business from outside of the States, then the more that argument makes sense to them, right? So what would be a good answer to that, and a good strategy to that? Start a new business. Do the same thing, but in volume, like I said, but with a new entity, new EIN, new bank account. And
Right.
then perhaps that's going to be a more convincing argument than saying, hey, I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. I make $150,000 a month. Officer might say, well, why do you need to be here? You're doing it pretty well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So,
But no, I mean, to your point, Joaquin, it really is important how you structure the business and how you write the business plan, and make sure that there's a convincing argument, and make sure that the narrative is being supported with a lot of data. Because at
yeah,
the end of the day, this is not a computer generated algorithm that just automatically qualifies or disqualifies you. You
right,
are there to almost like convince a person, a human being who
yeah,
has been taught certain things, and who has a certain guideline and certain things to check. And if you know exactly how you can make that person's life easier, help in their decision making, I think it's going to be a pretty smart way of doing it. But if you have a situation that you believe is different, you might schedule a call with us, and we can look into the situations and see what we can do. Maybe there is something we can do. Maybe we can approach it with an angle that solves your problem. Maybe there's nothing we can do, and then we would wish you good luck.
yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of strategies, right? So, like, even for that gentleman, I'm not to go back to that gentleman and pick on him. But one good strategy that we've seen, a lot, and we've talked about a lot, is that perhaps that one idea that you have might not be the best one. Usually, the issue is whether or not the money is sort of sufficient for the type of idea that you have, right? But there are strategies that you can have. For example, this strategy is utilized a lot. You might be a really good businessman, businesswoman in whatever field that you have, and that perhaps might not be a good fit at this moment, right, for an E2 visa. But perhaps your spouse, right, or you have the money, right, in order to say buy a franchise, and then your spouse comes in, and then he's the one that is doing the application for the E2 visa, and then running the franchise. The spouse of the E2 applicant is not obligated to work on the business that gave you that E2, right? Gave you the
mhm.
spouse the E2. So that means that, guess what? You can work in whatever you want. So if you're flipping houses and that's what you like to do, well, that might be a good strategy. Where, say, your spouse is running um, a franchise, whatever it may be, an existing business or something like that. But let's just go with a franchise, right? And you get approved the visa, and then you can do house flipping. You can do house flipping all you want. It has nothing to do with the visa. Yes, your spouse has to it's obligated to focus on the franchise, on the business that was approved for the E2 visa, but not the spouse. So that's a good avenue. So it's all about strategy. You need to talk to people who know and who have done this for a long time and can see different routes for you to take in order to position yourself in the best way for you to grow and grow your business, whatever it may be.
Right. Cool. All right. Joaquin, thank you very much. I know you need to run. I think it's been a pretty nice, half an hour. We went just a little over half an hour conversation. Guys, if you've liked the information that, Joaquin and I were able to provide, please do give the video a like and make sure you tune in to the upcoming live streams that we have. We are trying to do this every Friday. The more of you show up, the more questions you ask, the more we are motivated to do those. All right, cool. Joaquin, thank you so much, and see you
Thank
next
you.
week, guys.
All right. Take care.